Hello students, I am your Bhushan sir. Hope all of you are healthy and safe at home. Today we shall understand the type study organism under phylum Annelida, that is earthworm. Type study animal generally represents rest of all the animals of the phylum. That is, its study will remain almost the same as the rest of all the animals of the phylum. Earthworm is technically or scientifically called with the name Pheretima posthuma. You can check out the spelling on the slide here. It belongs to the phylum Annelida and the class is Oligochaeta. And here in today's session, we shall understand the morphological or external features of the earthworm, that is Pheretima posthuma. The objectives of today's study is to understand morphology and structural organization of earthworm. Content includes external morphology of earthworm. Students, generally the scientific term used for external features is morphology, but in our practice we make use of both the terms. So, I have included both the terms here. External morphology, actually both the terms means the same, okay? But in practice we have the usage of both the terms, and hence I have mentioned the same here also in this slide. Well, earthworm is a vermiform annelid. Generally, it lives underneath the moist or damp soil, and it is commonly called as the farmer's friend, as it plows and loosens the soil by bringing the underlying layers to the top. Thus, the nutrients of the soil becomes easily available for the agricultural plants there. Students, morphology or external features refers to the outward appearance or the visible characters to us when we see an organism. The first feature is its shape, then follows its color, then follows its structural features. So, likewise, one by one the features of appearance of the organism we will consider here. Let us start with the first feature here, that is the shape. The earthworm has a body which is elongated, long, vermiform, that is cylindrical and narrow. It is a very slimy organism to touch because of the mucus what it secretes on the epidermis, that is the skin. The frontal end, the front end, is generally said to be pointed, and the posterior end at the back is blunt. The body at anterior is slightly thicker when compared to the posterior side. I think you all can see these features in the image down in this slide here. The organism of earthworm exhibits antero-posterior polarity. You can see the organism with the features which will modify from anterior to posterior, that is to top to bottom. The second important polarity is dorsal and ventral polarity, that is upper and lower surfaces. The dorsal surface or the upper surface of the body of earthworm, when we look at, it has a very dark middle line. It will enmark the presence of a dorsal blood vessel. So, there is a dorsal blood vessel that runs at the middle of the body at upper surface, that is on the dorsal surface. So, it can be well seen here. And the skin is very transparent. So, whatever you find the feature of the dorsal blood vessel, it can be easily visualized here. You can see it in the image down here. So, you can find a line passing at the middle of the body of earthworm. So, that is exactly the dorsal blood vessel. The second surface is the ventral surface of the lower surface. Students, ventral surface of earthworm, it is provided with many number of openings of the body or apertures of the body. It includes example of mouth, then reproductive organs opening, we call it as genital openings, and also shows presence of some papillary structures. Almost all these openings are seen towards the anterior end, that is the frontal end region. For example, the mouth, it is seen at the ventral side of the first segment. Then it will show the presence of the genital openings of both male, female, and genital papillary openings, all papillary structures. All these openings are seen towards the nearer to the region of the Clytulum. We will look into that part little later. And towards the posterior most end, we find the opening of the anus. So, generally the body has got the major openings or apertures of the body, which includes mouth, the genital openings, and the anus, which are all almost situated towards the ventral surface. So, based on the openings or apertures of the body, we can easily demarcate that surface belongs to the ventral side. Next, coming on to the size of the animals. The size of the earthworm, that is Ferritima postuma, it will vary from individual to individual and even species to species. Ferritima species to species, it will vary in size. Generally, the average measurement of length, when we look at, it is 150 millimeters and width of 3 to 5 millimeters. Students, in my previous class, I think I have mentioned instead of 150 millimeters of length of earthworm, for an earthworm, I think I have mentioned it as 150 centimeters. Please correct there, and I am very sorry for giving a wrong unit for it. Okay, it is not 150 centimeters, it is 150 millimeters. Okay, this I think I remember when we were discussing the general characters and classification of phylum Annelida, I have made a mention of it. Okay, please correct it, students. It is 150 millimeters of length and 3 to 5 millimeters of width. Coming on to the color of earthworm. Generally, the body color of earthworm shows a very deep brown to clay coloration, and the color of the body wall is due to the presence of a special pigment in the skin, which we call it as porphyrin. So, the body wall of the organism has the pigment of porphyrin, which is responsible for imparting the color of brown to clay color to the body of earthworm. Students, the very purpose of this porphyrin pigment present in the body wall is to protect the animal against the bright and strong light. You know, earthworms are photophobic. Photo means light, phobic refers to hating. So, this organisms doesn't like the light. So, they are photophobic we call, and since they hate the light, the body condition of the organisms, when we look at, the skin has got the pigment of porphyrin, which will help them to have the hating process towards the light. And these organisms generally crawls during the night time. So, they are nocturnal organisms. Students, remember, the organisms has the body color which is brown to clay variation, and it is due to a pigment present in their body wall called as porphyrin. It is a protective pigment against the strong and bright light. And the color of the dorsal surface, the upper surface, when we look at, it is very darker compared to the ventral surface, that is the lower surface. So, this is about the importance of the color of the body in earthworm. The next important feature is segmentation. So, as earthworms belongs to the phylum Annelida, it shows true segmentation, which we call it as metamerism otherwise. The elongated body of the earthworm is divided into 100 to 120 small ring-like segments, which we call it as somites or metameres. So, 100 to 120, in some species up to 150 segments we can find. Average number is 120 we consider. Each segment has got innumerable rod-like structures called setae archaeae for the process of locomotion. So, there are special structures of locomotory organs present in the body of the organism of earthworm called as setae archaeae. Now, these segments are separated from each other. When we look at the body of the organism of earthworm, it has got number of segments. So, each segment has got an outer side, a furrow-like or a groove-like depression, and inside these grooves of outside will continue to form the septum or partitions. So, outer surface, when we look at it, has got grooves called dorsal grooves, and inside they continue to form the septum, and that deepens into the body of the organism, dividing the body cavity into number of chambers or partitions. Students, this kind of body division is called as the metamerism or segmentation process. So, we were discussing just now, internally the body is divided into partitions or segments, that is, the dorsal grooves run inside the body as septum or septae plural, and these septae will divide the body chamber into many small chambers or compartments, and these septae are responsible for internal segmentation of the body. So, outside also there is a kind of segmentation appearance, inside the body also there is segmentation, internal segmentation of the body. So, both external and internal segmentation of the body, since the organism has, it is called true segmentation or metamerism. Now, these septae, which will divide the body into number of compartments, also divides the coelom, that is the body cavity, as we have understood that between the outer body wall and the inner alimentary canal, there is the space which we call it as coelom. The coelom also gets divided here, and hence these septa are called as coeloseptae. Septae which divides the coelom is called coeloseptae. Then the speciality of these segments in the earthworm is that the segmentation process is that all the segments of the body are similar except the first segment and the last segment. The first segment is called a peristomium or buccal segment. The last segment we call it as anal segment or pygidial segment. Students, in the diagram down when we look at the dorsal weave is the first left side part of the diagram, and ventral weave is the right side part of the diagram. You can see both representing the first segment called as peristomium. Remember, peristomium forms the first ring-like segment for the body at anterior side. Now, these anterior end is demarked by, it can be visualized by the presence of an extension. So, peristomium part of the segment is getting extended anteriorly to form a lobe-like structure. So, this lobe-like structure, what it gets extended from the first segment called peristomium is now that extension part is called as prostomium. So, understand, prostomium is the extension part of the first segment, and the first segment we call it as peristomium. So, underneath this prostomium, at the junction towards the peristomium, there is the opening of the mouth. Okay, so this is how the segments can be easily demarcated as the anterior segments and posterior segments for the body of earthworm. Now, the anterior end of earthworm, it lacks the head, and the anterior end has the first segment, as we have understood, called peristomium or the buccal segment, and peristomium has towards its ventral side the opening of the mouth. Now, the mouth is a crescent shaped structure. Crescent means it is something like a cup. Okay, crescent means it is a wider cup like opening, and this mouth is protected by means of a mass of the body which gets extended from the anterior peristomium region called prostomium. So, prostomium is an additional part attached to the peristomium. So, don't get confused here, students. Most of the students gets confusion here between prostomium and peristomium. Peristomium is the actual ring-like structure which forms the first segment. In front of it, there is an extension of the peristomium which we call it as prostomium. Okay, this prostomium not only helps in protecting the mouth down, not only guards the mouth down, but also helps in digging the soil when the organism wants to have its burrow. Okay, so that's the importance of prostomium and peristomium here. Now, the next visible part of the body is Clytulum, or a girdle-like structure, or a thick collar. If you look at the image in this slide here, we have two parts of the body which is joined by means of a central structure which we call it as Clytulum. It is like two body parts are holded by means of a cap-like structure. That cap at the center, what you find here, is called as Clytulum. Students, in mature earthworms, when we look at the segment starting from the mouth, the first segment called peristomium, the second, third, fourth, like that, when you count down, between, the 14th, 15th and 16th segments, understand, 14th, 15th and 16th segments of the body in mature earthworms. when earthworms attains the maturity, at that time, these segments of 14, 15, 16 outside will secrete an additional body cover. So, inside segments are seen, remember that. But outside to those segments, you find a cover, a protective cover like this. So, this protective cover is secreted by the segments of 14, 15 and 16, and this appears in later days as a girdle. Girdle generally refers to something to join or hold two structures together. So, it appears like this here, and this structure now is called as Clytulum. Clytulum is seen only in mature earthworms, and it is absent otherwise in immature organisms, tiny organisms. I think you can see it here in the image above in the slide, which appears to be orangish band between two brown color segmental regions, okay, which we call it as Clytulum. Students, this Clytulum is a glandular organ. So, it secretes the secretions, remember that, okay. It is glandular. What it secretes? It will secrete the mucus, it will secrete the albumin. These secretions are commonly seen during the cocoon formation. Cocoon formation is seen during the developmental stage of the organism that assists in the phenomenon of fertilization. You know, fusion of male and female gametes, if it needs to happen, that is facilitated by the secretions of mucus and albumin of the girdle region, that is Clytulum. And now, these eggs are laid into the covering of Clytulum. It is like the body of the earthworm, when you imagine having 14, 15, 16 segments, let us consider. Now, outside to that, we have the band of Clytulum. Okay. Now, this Clytulum starts secreting its secretions of mucus and albumin, and they are thrown inside. That is towards the inner surface. If this is the Clytulum inner surface will secrete those secretions. And this is the region almost where the male and female gametic cells are also thrown out. So, sperms are thrown out, eggs are thrown out, and these secretions are also thrown in by the Clytulum. So, body segments will throw out the gametes, and inner surface of Clytulum will throw in the mucus and the secretion of albumin. All this is packed by the outer covering of Clytulum, because this Clytulum now will form one more layer, and this Clytulum will shed off, it will come out. It is like a chocolate wrapper, you can remember, okay. So, inside which all the content will be there, and the wrapper will have an outer fold. Okay. So, like this, the Clytulum will detach now at the time of when the secretions of albumin and mucus comes out, and at the same time from segments the gametic cells comes out, all they are packed, during which the Clytulum is pushed up. So, it is pushed away, and this Clytulum which is pushed away will wrap this content, and as the earthworm it will wriggle out, it comes out, earthworm will slowly move out, and the Clytulum will remain like this. So, it will wither out and it will move away, and this Clytulum, when the earthworm moves away, it folds like a chocolate wrapper. So, that structure we call it as cocoon. So, we will study this in detail when we take up the reproduction in the earthworm, but right now you will have to remember Clytulum involves in the formation of the cocoon. Okay, it plays a major role in the formation of cocoon, and that cocoon covering is majorly contributed by the covering of Clytulum itself. So, where do we find this Clytulum? It is a band-like structure that you find in the mature earthworms. Okay. So, that is the importance of the Clytulum. Now, I think it is clear. Let me repeat it, students. Clytulum is a girdle-like structure which is glandular in function. It secretes its secretions of mucus and albumin, and these secretions are said to be seen during the maturity of the organism, that is during the cocoon formation. And this girdle or Clytulum is absent in the immature earthworms. Excuse me. Okay. And inside this Clytural covering, you find this process of fertilization happening between male and female gametes. Now, a very important feature that we should remember here is that Clytulum is a very major structure which we find in the mature earthworms, will help us to divide the body into three parts, three regions. Down in the picture of earthworm, when we look at, Clytulum portion is seen between 14, 15 and 16 segments. Okay? Those segments outside is covered by the band of Clytulum. So, inside 14, 15, 16 segments are seen for Ferrithema organism. In front of it, you have 13 segments, correct? Right? Towards anterior side. Otherwise, towards one side you have 13 segments because Clytulum has 14, 15 and 16 segments. Towards one side, it will have 1 to 13 segments. Other side, 17th segment onwards, the number will continue, and you know, average number of segments present in the body of earthworm is 120. If that is the case, from 17th segment to 120th segment, you find the segments towards the other side of the Clytulum. So, Clytulum acts as a middle portion. Towards one side, it will have 13 segments. Towards other side, it will have more than 100 segments. So, the region where, understand students, the region where you have only 13 segments left, that region will form, the end of it will form the anterior end. The segments where you have following 17th to 120 segments, which is more than 100, that region of the body, you call it as a posterior side, okay, posterior end it will lead into. So, generally, Clytulum portion of the earthworm we call it as Clytular region, front of which towards anterior side where you have 13 segments is called as a Preclitalum region. Pre means before. So, anterior to Clytulum you have Preclitalum region. Posterior to Clytulum you have 100 segments almost, and that region we call it as Postclytular region. So, the body of the organism of earthworm is getting divided into three parts: Clytular region, anterior Preclitalum region, posterior Postclytular region. So, that is the importance of Clytulum here. Coming on to the region of Preclitalum. Preclitular region, as we have understood, it starts from first segment to 13th segment. The first segment is called peristomium, which will have the mouth towards its ventral side, which is a large and crescent shape. And anterior to this region of peristomium, you have a fleshy extension of lobe called as prostomium, and that region will form preclitular region. Okay. And the second region down, I think here you can see an earthworm towards the left side. The preclitular region is very short, the band-like structure of Clytulum, followed by a long segmental region of postclytular region. Okay. And I think we have understood much about the anterior end of the earthworm, where you have peristomium, mouth, prostomium, etc. Now, the second important region is Clytular region. So, we shall understand a little more details about the Clytulum. As we know, Clytulum is seen only in matured earthworms. It is seen as a band-like structure between 14, 15 and 16 segments outside. And this is a glandular region. It is also made up of many number of nephridia. You know, nephridia are the excretory structures present, right? So, to make these cells, we know that the Clytulum is highly glandular, highly secretory in function. So, to bring about the overaction for the structure of Clytulum, more of energy is utilized. So, metabolism is also high, and ultimately the excretory products formed at this location is also very high. So more concentration or more number of nephridia hence are seen at the region of Clytulum to remove all those excretory waste out. And hence Clytulum is commonly called as forest of nephridia. It's a very important term to be remembered. Clytulum is commonly called as what? Forest of nephridia because of its glandular and high metabolic function. Okay, fine. So now post-clitular region will start from 17th segment till the last segment, which we call it as anal segment. So towards the right side of the slide, you have the image showing the Clytulum of 14th, 15th and 16th segment. Down it continues with the